Your article already pulses with emotional intensity and dramatic stakes befitting General Hospital at its most riveting. Below is a refined and slightly extended version that deepens character motivations and consequences, while keeping the emotional momentum and adding more connective tissue. Let's dive in. General Hospital, Brooke Lynn and Lulu's final reckoning, a storm of secrets, betrayal, and the cost of truth. Port Charles has long been a city fueled by secrets, veiled glances, whispered betrayals, and truths buried beneath layers of good intentions. But few secrets have detonated with the emotional velocity of the one surrounding Giovanni, the child whose existence was already complex, but whose true parentage has now plunged 3 lives into a maelstrom of revelation, resentment, and regret. What was meant to be a moment of truth became a nuclear event, and in its aftermath, Brooke Lynn and Lulu find themselves standing in the rubble of their own choices, with nothing left but ashes and accusations. For years, the truth about Gio, that he is the biological son of Brooke Lynn and Dante, was a fragile, protected thing, swaddled in confusion and cloaked in decades of pain. But secrets have a way of demanding light, and when they are finally exposed, they don't emerge gently. They explode. And no one is left untouched. Brooke Lynn had spent years crafting a new version of herself, no longer just Ned's daughter, no longer merely a Quartermaine heir trying to sing her way out from under a legacy. She became a mother figure to Bailey, a partner to Chase, and eventually, a co-parent with Dante, whose steady strength helped her believe she could rewrite her story. But all the while, another chapter was lying in wait, the one she had no idea she'd written, the one with Gio at its center. And then came Lulu. Her return from the brink of death should have been a triumph, a family reunited, a mother embracing life again. But what awaited Lulu wasn't a world waiting with open arms. It was a life that had moved on without her. And watching Dante grow close to Brooke Lynn, watching a child she once believed to be hers slip through her fingers, created a bitterness that she couldn't silence. Her wounds hadn't healed in stasis, they had festered. Determined to make sense of a world that no longer fit her, Lulu began to pry, to peel back the layers of narratives others had spun in her absence. But what began as a search for clarity became an obsession. Fueled by a cocktail of heartbreak, resentment, and fear, she launched her own clandestine investigation. And what she found shocked even her, a paternity that had been lost in the fog of trauma, protected by silence, and preserved only by the fragility of memory. But instead of offering compassion or understanding, Lulu went nuclear. Cornering Lois, the one person who might have offered context and calm, Lulu chose confrontation over conversation. She hurled accusations like daggers, never realizing, or perhaps not caring, that Gio was within earshot. And in one devastating moment, the truth was laid bare in the most violent way possible, not through a mother's loving arms or a father's steady voice, but through overheard shouting, denial, and blame. The consequences were immediate and catastrophic. Gio, already grappling with his place in a complicated family tapestry, was suddenly yanked from everything he thought he knew. His identity, once anchored by certainty, was now adrift in a sea of betrayal. The people he trusted had lied. The people he admired had failed. And worst of all, he was made to feel like a weapon in a war he never asked to fight. Brooke Lynn, gutted by the fallout, found herself spinning in a vortex of fury and sorrow. She had always known her past would come back, but not like this. She had hoped, in some naive corner of her heart, that if Gio were ever to know the truth, it would be with gentleness, with preparation. Not as shrapnel from Lulu's rage. And in the eye of the storm, Lulu stood firm, unrepentant, even defiant. To her, the truth was sacrosanct. That it hurt was regrettable, but that it needed to be said was indisputable. Brooke Lynn's silence, Lulu argued, was never noble. It was cowardice wrapped in the guise of protection. She claimed that Gio deserved better than a web of half-truths and omissions. That no matter how messy, truth was the only way forward. But Brooke Lynn wasn't interested in Lulu's justifications. Not anymore. The confrontation between them was volcanic, a culmination of years of unresolved animosity, of moments passed over for the sake of peace, of buried jealousies and unspoken grievances. Brooke Lynn called Lulu out, not just for the ambush, but for the hypocrisy. For wielding Gio's life as a cudgel. For punishing Brooke Lynn not because it was right, but because it felt good. She accused Lulu of using the truth not as salvation, but as sabotage. And then, the cruelest cut. Lulu accused Brooke Lynn of always knowing. That every excuse, every tear, every moment of confusion was theater. That she knew Gio was hers and chose silence, because admitting the truth meant losing control, meant opening herself to judgment, meant giving Lulu a reason to come back into the fold. But Brooke Lynn, voice cracking with pain, swore otherwise. She recounted the chaos of Gio's birth, the drugs, the trauma, the fog that never fully lifted. She remembered being told it was a girl. She remembered believing it. And later, when she held Bailey in her arms, she tried to bury the question that gnawed at her. Because reopening that wound felt like a cruelty. Because if the answer was what she feared, then silence felt like mercy. Now, mercy is a word no longer recognized in this war. Dante, standing between them, tried to make sense of the ruins. He saw in Lulu a woman lost in the wake of her own survival. He saw in Brooke Lynn a mother undone by guilt and circumstance. But what he couldn't find was a way to fix any of it. His heart fractured, caught between the past he once loved and the present he fought to preserve. And for Gio, for the boy at the center of it all, Dante felt nothing but helplessness. In the days that follow, the damage spreads like wildfire. Gio pulls away from them all, from Brooke Lynn, from Dante, even from Lois. He becomes a shadow in his own life, unsure who to trust, unsure who to be. He questions not only their motives, but his own existence. What does it mean to be loved, if love was always wrapped in lies? Brooke Lynn spirals, not into recklessness, but into numbness. The spark that once defined her dims, her laughter replaced by silence. She loses her footing at deception. Her dynamic with Chase is strained, fractured by truths she can't explain and guilt she can't escape. Even her grandfather, Ned, finds her unreachable. And Lulu, oh, Lulu, walks away believing she did what had to be done, but finds herself more alone than ever. Dante no longer confides in her. Laura can't justify her methods. Even Maxie, once her closest friend, struggles to look her in the eye. She has won the battle for truth, but lost the war for connection. Port Charles, already used to tragedy, watches with unease. The Quartermains are shaken. The Falconeries are split. And the boy who was meant to bridge two legacies now stands between them, unsure which, if either, he belongs to. And still, the question lingers, was it worth it? Was exposing the truth worth the scorched earth it left behind? Was protecting a lie more cruel than revealing it? Can healing come after such deep wounds, or is this just the beginning of a generational fracture? For Brooke Lynn, for Lulu, for Dante, and most of all for Gio, the road ahead is uncertain. Their reckoning has arrived, not just of truth, but of consequence. And whatever comes next, they will face it not as a family, but as fractured pieces of what might have been. Because in Port Charles, the truth is never simple. And the cost of it? Always more than anyone expects. Let me know if you'd like this to continue with the next phase, e.g., Gio running away, Brooke Lynn confronting Olivia, or Lulu spiraling further.